Well, good evening, one and all joining us on YouTube. Do let us know firstly if there's any audio issues, if I'm too loud or my guest is too quiet or my guest is too quiet and I'm too loud. But joining me this evening, the host of the excellent Total Saints podcast, Ben, good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Freddie. Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to everyone watching. And as we mentioned on the pod, I know you were on our podcast at the weekend. It's been a pretty good Christmas and New Year for Saints.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for much more, really. 10 points from that sort of 4 games over the festive period. And, I think it's back to kind of reality and regular routines now, back in the swing of things. Now the 8th of January. I was hoping that my Christmas break would be extended just a little bit longer.
I know it's that's the thing with football. When it's going badly, you don't want the games to come along, do you? The international breaks are a blessing in disguise. And actually, now we sort of feel we're on a bit of an up. You kind of almost ticking the days off until the games come around again. So it's gone full circle, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's far too many fixtures in that festive period, but now it's we're back to Saturdays, 3:00, and it's Leicester City this weekend as well. But firstly, before we get there, we've got a special event happening Friday evening down at our favourite haunts or match days at Five Rivers. Just tell us a little bit more before we get into our Huddersfield review in a minute.
Yeah, no worries. So in a couple of weeks' time, it will be episode. We just recorded 97 that you were on, Freddie, with Glenn and Lucy at the weekend. We're recording on Friday of this week, Friday the 10th of January, our 100th episode, which will be edited and then out in a couple of weeks' time. But we're doing it in support of Saints Foundation. So I was very keen to make sure that we tried to do something that would make it memorable, but more importantly, rewards the foundation that obviously do a fantastic job, as we all know, as Saints fans. So you're right, it's down at the Five Rivers. Mange is kindly hosting us for the evening, and people are welcome to come along. There's a £10 cost for tickets. 100% of that £10 is going to the Saints Foundation. There's a little cost on top for buying the ticket, but essentially 8:00 Friday night. Doors will be open from 7 so that everyone can get in there and have a drink and a chat and get ready. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little bit nervous, of course, because unlike you, Freddie, I don't do that many live events. But I think the most important thing is that we're going to try and raise £1,000 for Saints Foundation. I think if we can get that figure, I don't really care how the pod goes, because that will be even more amazing. So it'll be a good way to recognise a lot of blood, sweat and tears over 100 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Saints Foundation, wonderful cause for the local area, supporting, underprivileged kind of people, and, fantastic place to host it to. And I guess we'll have a little bit of security here, that I have the computer screen rather than doing the live events in person. But we're looking forward to it, a drink as well. And I guess people that are living locally and that are planning to come along, but don't want to maybe put their details through Eventbrite. Can we just rock up on the night and pay for a ticket on the door?
Yeah, I think we've tried to keep it to sort of buying tickets beforehand, just so we know who's coming up. So ideally, if you can go to eventbrite.co.uk at some point before Friday lunchtime, that would be handy, because it does give you a printed out ticket, and then we can just make sure that, for those that have paid to get in, that there's not people just winging it. It's quite hard, and we're not having anyone on the door or anything like that. But I forgot to add that the Saints Foundation are bringing along a guy called Russell Loveland, who's an ex sort of drug addict and an ex sort of petty criminal, who I think's been very much involved with the Saints Foundation and turned his life around. So he's going to be there to chat to us about how the foundation have helped him. So I've got to be honest, Freddie, I think it's well worth paying the £10. And if there is someone stood at the door waving a tenner, of course, we're not going to turn them away.
Yeah, all for the buckets, I think. And, £1,000, I think we can achieve that on the night as well. Right, let's get to our comments then. And firstly, if you are regular here, do let us know you're with us this evening. But to your comment, PXHM, does he read the chat? Yes, we do. And your comments are live on screen. So there you are. Yo. There you go. Hi, Samuel. Hope everyone's having a good week. How are we feeling about the Leicester game? Can we do this? Can we get a win? We'll get to more on that in just a moment, so stay with us. But first, I think we'll just discuss and review a little bit in detail the FA Cup third round. Sometimes it's lost its magic over the last few years, but an excellent turnout, in fact, at St Mary's at the weekend, near on about 20,000. Cheap tickets, £10-12 for the adults and only £1 or £2 for the kids as well. And different atmosphere, but we got the job done. It was no mean a classic, though, was it, Ben?
It wasn't, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, Freddie. I think it was brilliant. I saw loads and loads of people that I follow on Facebook, friends and Twitter and things like that, that are taking their children to their first Saints game. And I think there was, as you said, a real family atmosphere. Saints obviously did a good job of reducing tickets and making it a lot more competitive than it is for the Premier League. And we want to be encouraging the future generations to come along, don't we? We don't want them wearing Manchester United shirts and Liverpool shirts. We want them to be wearing Saints shirts and be at the St Mary's cheering the team on. And, I think it was great to see so many families there, Freddie. And yeah, I mean, look, we got the job done. It wasn't a classic. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about the goal scorers in a minute and the impact that they had. But I guess it's a sign of how Saints have turned things around the last few months, because even I was confident that we would get the job done. And, that's unheard of, really. But I think, a few months ago, we'd potentially seen that as a banana skin. I know Huddersfield are struggling. They had a few chances at 0-0, but ultimately a really professional job by Saints. And, I still get nervous, I think, when the draws are being made, that it's going to be an exciting tie. And I think for me, that shows personally that I've still got that passion for the FA Cup. And it's sad sometimes to see the empty stadiums and the, teams making that sort of thing. I know Saints did it, but it was still, I think understandable after the Christmas run. So, yeah, job done. And, we're in the hat, and I'm sure we'll talk about the draw as well.
Yeah, and of course, let's get straight to that draw then. Firstly, good evening to Kieran. Good evening to Raul. Good to see you guys once again. I mean, there was a real possibility that we could have had them locked down the road once again.
I know we spoke about it on the pod, didn't we, at the weekend? And I know Glenn was adamant that he wants them to stew on the fact that we beat them 4-0 for a lot more years to come yet. But it was a bit of a disappointing draw. I think you either want sort of someone, maybe lower league away so you can have a good day out, or a winnable game at home. I think Borough and Spurs, obviously, you'd imagine Spurs will come through that replay. So it's one of those ones where you sort of think, well, will Saints focus on it and give it 100%, or will Spurs do the same? You don't quite know which teams will come out. But I guess from a Saints point of view, reiterating what we just said there, Freddie, I imagine it's going to be competitive prices that will get some more people in the door, and at least it's a home time which will generate some interest around the city.
Yeah, and it could well be a possible another TV fixture for I guess for our round. I mean, Middlesbrough and Tottenham, their replay is being shown on BBC One in the UK next week. So I guess Saints fans will be watching it with bated breath. So who we're going to get? I mean, back to the matters on the pitch. So 10 changes, as you mentioned. The only player retaining his position was James Ward-Prowse, and Ralph said he was a machine. He's played all the minutes so far in the Premier League, and he's captained the side in the FA Cup last week. But I think it was more of an audition for the players that were on the fringe of the squads. He played a mixture of youngsters, fringe players. But I think we've got to say, maybe sort of struggled to find a bit of rhythm in the start of the game, really, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I think you can probably understand it. I mean, some of those players, Romeo, Vestergaard, people like that, haven't played for weeks, have they? So I think you've got to understand that even against a team like Huddersfield, it's going to be competitive. It's not like you're playing a friendly where it's a bit more like a training match. So I think it will take some of them a bit more time to get up to speed. But I think you have to look at it. We got a clean sheet. We won the game. No one did themselves a disjustice. I don't think, they didn't do themselves a disservice, and come out of it in negative. So it's probably given Ralph a few options heading into the next run of games. We're probably going to start to see a little bit of fatigue potentially in some of the players that were really putting in that effort over Christmas. You mentioned Prowse, obviously. So, I guess we want players in the wings that are chomping at the bit, that are competitive, and they may not be as good as the team that are currently starting in the Premier League, but the least you can hope for is that they're match fit and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some youngsters as well, also given their first team first start for Jake Vokins. He appeared in the League Cup game earlier this season, but also a first team start for Will Smallbone. He was in the squad actually the week before, and I think some of they were quite lively on their debuts. I think got themselves into good areas, wanted the ball often, but dipped in and out. And Will Smallbone almost had an immediate kind of impact. Great little touch for Shane Long, only for VAR. We thought it was on our side, and then it was ruled out for offside by millimetres.
Yeah, I mean, it was offside, wasn't it? We can't really argue. I think when you look at the replay, we've had quite a few go for us this season. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I must be honest. Considering I do the podcast, and considering I've followed Saints for so many years, I don't maybe pay enough attention to the youngsters as I should do. I think I tend to focus on what the first team are doing. I know there's some people that really get really enthused about the under-23s, the under-18s, and spend a lot of time watching players come up through the pipeline. And it's great to see them getting an opportunity. I think we felt when Ralph came in that, we saw Jan Valery come into the side, Matt Targett, people like that. We probably felt he was going to go down the youth route a little more. And then at the start of this season, he kind of totally forgot about them, didn't he? And it's taken a while for some of them to get back into the side. So, yeah, I think all they can do is come in and make an impact. And they certainly did that. They were on the match interviews after the game, weren't they? And both scoring the goals and getting us through. And, I think particularly Vokins at left back, we know at the moment that Bertrand is our only option. Vokins is obviously going to take a bit of time probably to get up to Premier League level, but at least it gives something Ralph to think about. We've gone through that period where, I remember Ralph Kruger saying he wanted 2 players for every position, and there's some positions in that squad at the moment that we haven't got that. Left back's definitely one of them. So hopefully the more Vokins plays particularly, that'll give him some confidence, and he can go away and work on things with the coaching staff that he needs to do to get better.
Yeah, I mean that's the target. It was also for the January transfer window, isn't it? A full back, probably left or right. I mean, and maybe ideally someone that can play a bit of both, to be honest. I think we're still sniffing around this Joachim Myler fella from Genk, but nothing of substance at the moment. But I mean, more on Jake Vokins, really. I mean, proud day for him as well, on the score sheet, along with his mate Will Smallbone. But he was, I guess, if we look at his kind of his performance to some extent, often left a bit exposed and quite, clear that he's a bit naive. I mean, sort of mostly defensively, but, looks like he's great going forwards. Again, a lot to learn. So, one to watch, I think.
Yeah, and I think we've seen it with Gareth Bale, we've seen it with Wayne Bridge, players like that they just started left wing, didn't they, and gradually got made into a left back. From what I understand of Vokins, that's more of his natural position. So he's someone that I wouldn't say they're trying to convert, but obviously that's a natural position that he can play at the moment, left back. So I think, he's maybe used to attacking more, and that's why, there is that sort of gap in behind him. I remember with Gareth Bale, he was great at marauding forward at Saints, wasn't he? But he wasn't the best defensively, and, he went on to have a pretty decent career. So I think, he's very young. There's plenty of time for him to develop. The only way he's going to do that is to get opportunities, whether it's at Saints in the Cup or going out on loan or something like that. So, great. I think the most important thing we want to see is players starting to come through the academy again, because there has been a bit of a lull the last 4 or 5 years. Maybe one coming through or something like that. Prowsey, Target, Jan Valery, players like that. So if we can get 2 or 3, 4 coming through, then that's going to be great, because it really puts into fruition the effort that goes in at that level.
Yeah, I mean, Clara, also a youngster from the youth academy, has gone on loan this week to another Austrian side. And also, I don't know how much you've seen of the FA Cup the weekend as well, but we had Alfie Jones and O'Connor start for Gillingham against West Ham. So great to see them getting a bit of experience at Football League clubs in their chance against Premier League sides in cup competitions. But Will Smallbone, what a day to remember for him. If we talk about the goal here, a looping ball that looked like it never would come down from Danso on that far side. He finds Long, who wins absolutely everything in the air. Doesn't matter if his defender is 7 foot tall, but Shane Long will leap like a salmon to get that ball, nods it back. Will Smallbone strikes it sweetly, and it smashes a straight past for his first goal of his career.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant technique, wasn't it? I think that's the sort of one that we get in the park, don't we? We shank it and it goes, 25 foot over the crossbar, that sort of thing, or over the jumpers or whatever they are. But yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant technique. And more importantly, I think actually that being 2 minutes after half time, we'd had the goal chalked off, hadn't we, just before half time? So I think that probably gave Saints a little bit more comfort to actually relax and get that goal. So it was an important time to score as well, Freddie. And yeah, I mean, it was a little bit agricultural, a big high cross. And as you say, I mean, Shane Long, love him all year and there, and he wins an awful lot of headers. And, it was a smart finish, bearing in mind there was a couple of players on the line. So, yeah, I mean, great. I think for both those players, great to get an opportunity. I think even better for them and for the club. And, I spoke about the feel-good factor that's around at the moment. It kind of encapsulated that they both were on the score sheet, and that's, it was their goals that took us through.
Tam argues that Will Smallbone's chance was harder to score. I mean, Vokins' goal, we'll get to that in just a moment, is a bit fortuitous. I don't know how much of a deflection it took off of that defender's trailing leg, but it came in off the crossbar. Jake Vokins, pot shot, taking your chance. That's all that counts, there was nothing to lose, really, I think, to be honest. I mean, Huddersfield, thankfully, they weren't clinical enough at all. They really rarely threatened, and but we, sometimes we did show again our inabilities, sometimes leaving ourselves a little frail, exposing, perhaps the weaknesses to, the 2 defenders on the day, Yoshida and Vestergaard. But I guess maybe they didn't do too much for their chances to play at the weekend.
No, I think Bakuna had a brilliant chance, didn't he, just before half time that he shot straight at Angus Gunn. And I guess you can imagine Danso, Vestergaard, Yoshida, at some point this season they probably have played together, bearing in mind how many changes Ralph was making back there a few weeks ago. But, I go back to what I said earlier, Freddie, that they are a bit rusty. They're not probably full of confidence. I don't think there's much communication between the three of them. So, it was a clean sheet. And I think, as the back five, they will probably look at that and think, look, we couldn't have done any more. You can only beat what's in front of you. All the cliches that we would go through as football fans. So I think you just have to sort of move on, and a job well done, I think.
Yeah, and I think somebody that has been also linked with a lot of rumours and gossips columns this week to Leeds. Shay Adams scored no goals this season, of course, but still coming under a bit of stick. But I've got to say, his movement again was great. He was lively. He wanted the ball. And he set up Jake Vokins for that goal. A little sort of pass to the space. I mean, so much space. You could get an aircraft carrier down that left hand side. And Jake Vokins, he was invited to shoot. Proud moment for him. Like his mate Will goes in off the crossbar. I don't know was there much of a deflection on there, but it absolutely finished the game off. It was a routine win in the end.
Yeah, it was. I think there was a bit of a deflection, but goals always look better when they're going off the crossbar anyway, don't they? So, but I think going back to Shay Adams, Saints made a lot of effort in the summer, didn't they, to get him? He was very much top of the list, I think, for Ralph to bring in. I'd be surprised, but I'd also be disappointed if they kind of gave up on him and sent him out on loan, because I do think he gives them an option. Essentially, we spoke about it at the weekend. I think many Saints fans will have spoken about it. We're kind of, touch wood, waiting for Danny Ings to break almost, aren't we? And if he breaks, what happens then? We've got Shane Long, but who else have we got? So I think ultimately Che Adams for me is someone you kind of want those three strikers competing against each other and training and pushing each other to get out on the pitch. And I think he's only going to get confidence from playing. And, the goal, you kind of feel like you need one to hit him on the backside and go in, and then he'd probably get 10 by the end of the season. He's just, I think, whether he's trying too hard, I don't know. But I think ultimately he's someone that I know Ralph said that he wasn't going to go anywhere. But of course, money talks, doesn't it? If someone comes in like Leeds and said, I don't know, £1 million taken until the end of the season or something, then it might be a different story. But for me, you want to keep him at the club, you want to keep him working with Ralph, and he's still fairly young, so you want to help him develop and maintain that confidence that he can be a Premier League player.
Yeah, I foolishly said at the start of the season he's going to score double figures. So if suddenly he
may still do, Freddie.
He may still do. Shane Long almost did it last season, scoring 6 in as many games. So still a chance for Shay Adams to do it. But I think if we again highlight Will Smallbone, Samuel asked, where does Smallbone's performance leave Josh Sims in the grand scheme of things? I mean, a lot of, again, more gossip column suggestion Josh Sims could be on his way out this window, and I want to see him more. Josh Sims, he hasn't had enough opportunities. Of course, played about 3 months over in the States for New York Red Bulls, but he makes an instant impact. He's direct, and we saw that kind of showcased last season in the Wolves game.
It's an odd one, isn't it, Josh Sims? He's been in and out of the team, under the last 4 or 5 managers. You remember he made that impact in the Everton game, didn't he? When Koeman said he'd never really heard of him, and then he set up Charlie Austin after a minute. He then came back, I think, under Mark Hughes. Ralph gave him a bit of a try last season, then he disappeared, as you say. So I don't know what it is with Josh Sims, because I think we've all felt that he's had that potential, but he's never really been given much of an opportunity by any of the managers. So it'll be interesting to see, as you say. I think he's been linked with Sheffield Wednesday. I think Gary Monk, the manager there, confirmed that they were looking at him. Of course, we don't know what will happen. But I guess, the way Saints are playing at the moment, they probably feel that, he's not going to get an opportunity, and you don't want too many players sat around not doing anything. So as you said earlier about the Gillingham lads, it's better if they can get out there and get some game time. So, he's someone that I've always rated, but for whatever reason, he's just not been given much of a chance.
Yeah, interesting. I think, again, we need to give him an opportunity, maybe a short-term loan in the UK or in England, in the Football League somewhere. But there are 3 candidates, and I guess for last few weeks, really kind of highlighting and showcasing what we can really do. I mean, obviously, Danny Ings is your obvious choice for a nomination for the Player of the Month as well. Also, of course, nominated for the Player of the Month for the Premier League. I'm sure the results will be announced in the next day or so. And Obafemi, his goal at Chelsea are nominated for his strike against Chelsea. But, 2 others, James Ward-Prowse has been the engine room, I think, recently, getting stuck in more than ever. I think he now possesses a really nasty streak to him. He's quite literally doing the dirty and taking one for the team. He's 5 yellow cards for the season now, which is the most of any of the Saints players, and he's covered the most amount of ground and 51 successful tackles now for the season.
Yeah, I say I chuckled. I think that's a bit unfair, but I did chuckle in inverted commas yesterday when I saw Mo Sissoko had a knee operation this week because, as we all saw at the weekend, I think he went in for a 50-50 with Prowsey, and it turned out to be a 95-5 by the time they'd finished. So I think it's testament to him, and I think Jack Stephens has been brilliant since he's come back in the last few weeks. I think Danny Ings' goals have been really important, but for me, I would give it to Prowsey, Freddie. I think he's been the Ralph called him a machine, didn't he? He's been the energy. The whole team needed a lift. They needed to really start giving 100%. He was someone I was calling for to be dropped before that Man City away game because he wasn't doing much. And the last 8 weeks or so, he's been phenomenal. And it's not just the fact that, as you said, he's run the most out of anyone in the entire Premier League. So he's playing, with heart. But it's not just the fact he's running around like a headless chicken. He's putting in tackles. He's putting in headers. He's leading. He's organising. He's shouting at players. He's acting as a captain, but obviously isn't the captain. And I think for me, he's been a real pivotal player in the middle of that field that's kind of almost joined the whole team together and got the success that we got the last few weeks. So I think you could choose any three of them. They've been brilliant. But for me, I'd go with Prowsey.
Yeah, I think I have to kind of extend on Jack Stephens again. Very, very similar to some respects with James Ward-Prowse. I guess somebody said to me the other day he's come of age, and this was after the Tottenham game. He's been leading his teammates now by example, doing the basics the only way you can do. Directing, organised, and has become a little bit more composed. I mean, he hardly had a sniff at the start of the season, but he's come on leaps and bounds recently. And it's a testament also to Ralph to get the best out of him. And I think it's a tragedy that he isn't also nominated for the Manager of the Month.
Yeah, we spoke about that at the weekend, didn't we? I mean, I don't know the reasons behind that. They obviously only chose three: Pearson, Solskjaer and Klopp. I mean, Klopp's probably going to be the runaway leader because Liverpool fans will vote for him, and he's obviously got a fantastic record this season. And, the good thing is that we know they're going to win the league now, so at least it won't be such a hurrah when we have to deal with it in May. But I think, just going back to Jack Stephens, I think the other thing as well is I've never been one to aggressively get, sort of slate players and boo them and jeer them and, whatever some people like to do these days. And I think for him to come back and perform the way he has done after the amount of flack he took over that sort of 6 months. I remember being at the Burnley away game last season when Crouchy was all over him and he gave away the handball for the penalty in the 94th minute. And you could see how much it had hurt him. And to go away, and I think many players mentally would really struggle with that. And he's come back, and I'd admit it's almost a bit of a no-lose situation for him because Saints were doing so badly when he came into the team again that you felt they could only go one way. But I think he's been brilliant, and he's organised, he's communicated, and more importantly, Freddie, what we all want to see is he plays with his, he has his heart on his sleeve. He plays for that Southampton badge. You can see how much it means to him, and we've seen so many players the last 3 or 4 years that I won't swear on your live broadcast, but they don't give a what. And to see someone like him, I'd much rather have a Jack Stephens giving 100% back there, maybe not technically the best player, than some prima donna that can't be bothered to play for Southampton.
I mean, actually, picking up on a comment I saw earlier from Ben from the Archers Road, I've been on the show before, and he said I think there's no there must be a correlation in I guess or Jack Stephens' trajectory or his performances recently now that he's not going out on the lash with Charlie Austin all the time.
We were saying that on the day that Charlie Austin's obviously given an interview to West Brom, but I mean, maybe that has helped. Maybe that's helping focus his game. He's now focused on what he needs to do, and he's got Ralph's support. I mean, you can see how much it meant to them after they beat Spurs, a big embrace. And I think there's a clear connection between Stephens and Ralph, which is what you want your manager to have with your players. So good on him. And as I say, I think he's done fantastic the last few weeks. And if he got Player of the Month for December or whatever, I'd support that as well. I think he's been superb.
Okay, right. This is the Leicester City match build-up show after all. So whatever you do, don't mention the score. I think we might have mentioned it once, but I think we got away with it. Anyway.
You're showing your age there, Freddie.
I love it. But we're seeking revenge, though, aren't we? The result in October was a wake-up call for everyone involved in the club, and we've looked unrecognisable since then.
We spoke about it on the podcast at the weekend, whether it was a bit of a watershed moment for Southampton Football Club. It could have gone one or two ways. They could have absolutely plummeted. They could have done a Sunderland, conceded goals, lost games, and just been relegated by February. It's gone the other way. It's almost, I think, helped Ralph refocus what he wanted to do. I think it's given the players a bit of a kick up the backside. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for all of us. I'm not going to mention the score. I don't ever want to mention the score again. But you kind of look back now and think, look, did it actually help us? Did it help the board sort of, reiterate that Ralph was going to be their manager going forward? So the players thought, right, that's not going to, we need to get behind this guy because he's not going anywhere. And if we want to stay at this football club, then we need to start performing. There's so many questions that I think came off the back of that have benefited us. And it's only now when you look back and it's laughable in two ways. It's laughable that we were so bad, but it's laughable that it happened. And, we've all come through it now, and you can sort of look back and think, thankfully it's done, and hopefully we'll never go through that again in our lifetimes following Southampton. But you would also hope that they will go up to the King Power this weekend and they'll want to get some pride back. I'm sure Leicester fans will be chanting, "We want 10" and all that sort of thing. But, you would hope that those players will go up there and give 100% and take this good run that they've got to the King Power and want to make a point and say, look, we know that you beat us by that many goals to none, but it won't happen again. And in fact, we're going to go out there today and give you a good game and hopefully beat you by a few.
Yeah, I wonder what the bookies' odds are for Saints to put 10 away against Leicester. I mean, the types of performances that we've gone to, Arsenal get a point. We've been to Man City, a spirited performance, wins against Tottenham, wins against Chelsea. Leicester, second in the league right now. And, if we look at them this time last season, they look unrecognisable too. Obviously, huge influence now from Brendan Rodgers. And the last visit to the King Power last year, we came away with a victory, and this was against Claude Puel's Leicester City.
I know, yeah, a team that naturally will be defensive and sit in. And if you think about it, I think we played all of the second half pretty much with 10 men, didn't we? So, yeah, I mean, it's a ground. I think we're unbeaten there in our last 3 games. 2-0 nils, of course, under Poole and Hughes, and then the win under Ralph. So I wouldn't say Leicester's been the happiest of hunting grounds for us over the years, although I do remember going to a game at Filbert Street when we won 4-0 once, so maybe it's not been that bad. But I think they'll be up for it and they'll fancy their chances of beating us. We know that. But I think the good thing for Saints is we know that Leicester City will attack us, and that's going to leave gaps in behind them for the players, to hopefully show some pace, whether it's Gineppo, Bufal, Redmond, whoever it is, to get up there and support Danny Ings to get some goals. It's not a team that is going to sit back and let us try and break them down. So, positives and negatives. We know they've got a lot of threats, but hopefully that will lead to some opportunities for us as well.
Yeah, of course, as well. I mean, if you look at the statistics this season, Leicester have the most amount of clean sheets. And, I think they're also helped by the protection in front of their back four with Wilfred Ndidi, now ruled out for a few weeks, apparently picking up an injury this week ahead of the Carabao Cup semi-final, which is happening right now. So, that they've made a couple of changes, to their first team selection. But, there is opportunities to get in here. You've got Evans, sometimes often, exposed somewhat, but Soyuncu, another good defender. So Danny Ings, but he can score all sorts of goals. He turned, it was Alderweireld, sometimes said one of the best defenders in the Premier League, turned him inside out, left him on his bum at in the last fixture.
He did. And I cursed it by saying that we scored in every away game this season since Burnley on the opening day. So, for Saints to go through that run, and as you said there, I mean, the list of teams we've beaten, we've been to Sheffield United and won, we've been to Brighton and won. I think I saw the other day that only the top 4 have won more away games than Saints this season. So we know that they've been more comfortable playing away without the pressure of the St Mary's crowd getting on their back defensively. So I think they will go there with confidence, Freddie. And why shouldn't they? I mean, forget the score that we won't talk about. Let's look at the most recent run. I mean, the last 8 Premier League games, we've won 5, we've drawn 1, we've lost 2. We've got 16 points from that period. So, we're on a really, really good run, and we are starting to look up the league rather than down it again. So let's go there, focus on what we want to do. We know that Ralph will have a game plan. We know that he will have the team ready to sort of think about any formations and players that Leicester will have. He has got them well organised again. So I hope that we go there and worry less about the threats that they have and how they're going to hurt us, and think about vice versa, really.
Yeah, here. That's well said. In fact, we've got to play to Danny Ings and his strengths, and Ward-Prowse, and, trying to get the Shane Long alongside Danny Ings as well. I mean, both of those were on the score sheet last time at the King Power, roughly this time last year, in fact. And Shane's goal that night was his first in 9 months. As we beat Leicester with 10 men. I think we got away with it.
Yeah, we did. I think it was actually going wide, wasn't it, until Schmeichel tipped it in. But let's not talk about that. But I think the good thing as well for Saints at the moment is you again, not to curse it, but you look up the spine of the team. Alex McCarthy is doing well. Jack Stevens, Bednarek are doing well. Pierre and Prowse are doing well. Ings are doing well. That's sort of the spine of the team is now performing to sort of 7, 8, 9 out of 10 every week. And as long as they do that, then that's, a lot of the threats for Leicester are through that. You think of Vardy and the midfielders, and then, as you said, defensively. So I think there will be lots of areas where Saints are playing well at the moment. And look, I'm not get carried away. I think it will be a very tough game. And if we come away with a draw, I'll be more than happy. But I think, the good thing is we're going there with players in form and a team in form. And as you say, I mean, they've lost 2 of their last 5, I think, to City and Liverpool, and they're starting to get a few niggles and things like that as well. So maybe we're getting them at a good time. You just don't know, do you? You never know with Saints how they're going to perform. It'll either be really bad or really good.
Well, Samuel adds anything from the last game against Leicester will be an improvement. Yeah, absolutely. Applaud that one. Second to that one. And Kelly adds, I'm confident because I know for a fact with our form, Ralph's looking forward for revenge. There's no doubt about it.
I think he'll have them really fired up. I totally agree with Kelly, Freddie. And it may not work. They may come away with a defeat, but I think by the time that they go out onto that pitch at 3:00 on Saturday, I think they will know their jobs. I think he will have them motivated, and I think they will be very, very keen to go out there and prove a point.
Yeah, right. People in the comments, if you're watching along on the live stream, fire through your score predictions or lineups. So, Ben, talk me through then, I guess, the lineup. I mean, we're going to expect a full strength apart from Ndidi for Leicester City, maybe 1 or 2 changes from the game tonight against Aston Villa in the Cup. Talk me through your 1 to 11.
Yeah, to be honest, Freddie, I think it doesn't change. I'd be going with Alex McCarthy. Cedric is still, unfortunately, our best right back. Bednarek, Stevens, Bertrand, Pierre and Prowse. For me, that back sort of 6 players is doing 7 players is doing as well as it can at the moment. So I think they pick themselves. I think because it's an away game, and I think because of the way he's performed the last few weeks, I'd have Stuart Armstrong playing. I think he did a really good job at Chelsea. He did a really good job at Aston Villa, and I think he's the sort of player that he feels like a bit of a calm presence when he gets to the ball. He doesn't, he's obviously a clear thinker. We know he's got nice hair, so that'll be good as well. So I think Stuart Armstrong would be in there, and for me, I'd have Redmond on the right, Danny Ings up front, and then Gineppo on the left, I think. So that would be my... Redmond on the left and Gineppo on the right. So I think that would be my team.
Yeah, I mean, Armstrong's not flash, is he? He doesn't pull off any tricks at all, but he gets his head down. Somebody kind of mentioned, I guess there's comments flying around social media quite often now, actually. The modern day Stephen Davis.
He is, but I mean, he does the basics well. He gets the ball, he gives the ball, he moves into space, he's looking up, he's thinking, he's always looking for that next pass. And you're right, Stephen Davis was like that. He couldn't run at 100 miles an hour. He didn't score 25 goals a season, but you knew that when he got the ball, he already knew where he was going to put it. He already knew who he was going to give it to. And I think Stuart Armstrong's like that. And we've seen as he's got a run of games that he's starting to get a bit more confidence. He's starting to get used to the speed of the Premier League. I really like him. I think he's, if he can stay fit, I think he's someone that can be a really valuable asset for us over the next few years.
Yeah, right. Score predictions then, Ben. Ings can have my babies. That's the profile, not my comments, by the way.
Yeah,
10-0 to the Saints. Come on, we'll put a pound down on that. What's the odds, fans? But get in touch. Right. I know you're generally quite a pessimist or I guess reverse psychology.
Reverse psychology. Yeah, that's the way I like to look at it. Yeah.
What's your? There's no prediction league in this one. It's just for credit. What's your score prediction then for the weekend?
Look, I do think it'll be tough. I know we've spoken very positive. I think we know Vardy is a very good player. I think if we can keep him quiet a bit like we did Harry Kane, then I think we've got a massive chance. I went for 3-1 from a reverse psychology point of view. As I said earlier, and as Kieran says there, I think if we can get a point, Freddie, I'd be more than happy with that. I think that would be a great return, ahead of the Wolves game next week. So I'm going to go 3-1 Leicester, but that's purely for reverse psychology reasons.
You know what? I think I'm going to agree with Kieran here, or if you've already listened to our episode, the Total Saints podcast episode, I will agree with Glenn. It was a 1-1 prediction. That's what I'm going to go for, and I think, as you say, Ben, I think we'll take that considering the last time we met Leicester.
Absolutely. Even if we can win, if we win 9-0, they'll go to extra time.
Oh, you said it. You've done it. We're so close to the end. So close. That's like conceding a last minute equaliser.
I said win 9-0. I didn't say that we. Anyway, carry on.
Well, I think that is about full time then for this live stream. Anyway, Ben, great to speak to you once again. Just really quickly, just remind our folks if you're living in the local area, how we can get down to the Five Rivers Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to go is eventbrite.co.uk, which is eventbrite.co.uk. And if you search for TSP 100, you'll be able to get tickets on there. As I say, if you can't get them in time and you fancy coming along, as long as you've got £10, then of course we'll let you in. But yeah, 8 o'clock on Friday. The doors will be open from 7 o'clock, and it's at the Five Rivers in Beavers Valley, Freddie.
Yep, excellent place. And we'll be all down there. Ben will be there, a few others from other podcasts, and the enigma that is Adam Leach will be on the panel, I hear, as well. And, you know, Glenn, other regular pundits as well. So great cause, you know, should be a good evening. So if you're living in and around Southampton, do get yourself down there. Join us for a beer, a curry, whatever you fancy. Anyway, great to speak to you, Ben. We'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, Freddie. Take care. And yeah, fingers crossed for Saturday.